Today we're going to look at PSG's new tactic under Luis Enrique in Football Manager. Despite losing to Botafogo recently, PSG has been one of the dominant forces in Europe in recent years. As far as 2025 is concerned, they are one of the best teams in the world right now. And if you want to play like PSG on Football Manager, just follow along with the video. I'm going to show you all the tactics and tweaks and player rules that you can go ahead and use and try to recreate that system for yourself. But before we dive into it, let's see how the tactic all started. After the departure of Kylian Mbappe to Real Madrid, PSG's manager Luis Enrique had a job to do rebuilding the team. The Spanish manager had once won the Champions League with FC Barcelona in 2015, and 10 years later he won the prestigious tournament again with his exciting PSG team, thrashing three-time winners Inter Milan 5-0 in the final. We'll take a closer look at Luis Enrique's tactic with PSG during the 2024-2025 season and how each player role contributed to the overall effectiveness of the team. Before Luis Enrique, PSG were not known for being the dominant team in possession, but ever since the Spaniard took over, he has redesigned the team's footballing identity in his image. Enrique implements an intense possession-based style of play. The team thrives on moving the ball around quickly to create gaps in the opposition's defense. Player rotations are essential for this system to work. The team plays out from the back with a makeshift back three system. During their build-up phase, the left back, Nuno Mendes, tucks inside to form a back three with the two central defenders, giving freedom for the right back, Achraf Hakimi, to get forward and join the attack. This makeshift back three is crucial to how PSG like to play out from the back. Nuno Mendes also has the freedom to actually cut inside with the ball. In this case, the defensive midfielder drops deep into the left back position to form the makeshift back three. Now, the defensive midfielder that drops deep could be anyone. The three midfielders in PSG's midfield are constantly rotating and swapping positions. This allows them to stay unpredictable and makes it difficult for the opponent to actually man-mark them. Vitinha and Fabian Ruiz have been instrumental to how PSG like to break the lines, dictate tempo and create chances in key areas. João Neves, being the younger of the three, plays a more aggressive role, closing down the flanks and applying pressure and forcing opponents into making mistakes. PSG's two wide players offer width for the side. Ivica Kvaratskhelia and Desiree Doué tend to start out wide and later cut inside into the middle. This wide position allows them to overload the flanks while maintaining midfield dominance in the middle. Nuno Mendes and Achraf Hakimi getting forward also allows them to create overloads on the flanks. But player rotations allow us to see Nuno Mendes and Hakimi sometimes inside of Kvaratskhelia and Desiree Doué, forcing the opponents to commit players out wide to defend the flanks. But all this wide pressure could become predictable if there's no space to attack. That's where Ousmane Dembele's new role comes in. Known for being a flamboyant winger who is comfortable with both feet, Dembele plays as a striker with freedom to roam into pockets of space. Dembele would drop deep into midfield to link up play and create spaces for the wide players to actually exploit. He's also capable of carrying the ball through the middle and breaking the line, so it makes it really hard to somehow mark him. Off the ball, we see the true commitment of the new PSG under Luis Enrique. Against Inter Milan in the Champions League final, PSG's pressing was relentless. They closed off passing lanes and hassled the ball carrier, forcing him to either go wide to the fullbacks or to go long to their striker. PSG also adopt a high defensive line and commit more players into the press. And because they're younger and faster, they tend to have an advantage with their pressing. They have the stamina, commitment and work rate to actually maintain their pressing intensity. But does this PSG side have a weakness? You see, in the French league, PSG dominate most teams in the league, so it's hard to actually find a consistent pattern of weakness in their game, as they win most of their matches. And even in the Champions League, the only noticeable weakness that the Parisians had were from defending corners. We see that against Arsenal and against Inter Milan in the final. I wasn't satisfied with this being their only weakness, so I asked Football Manager 2024 for help. Using a recreation of Luis Enrique's system in the game, here are some notable weaknesses. In a 4-2 win against Sporting Lisbon, the two goals we conceded came from wide areas. But these two goals had one key event in common: a long through pass to bypass the midfield. Pedro Gonçalves played a through ball to Trincao, who was out wide and unmarked. Trincao's cross found Nuno Santos in the box. For Sporting's second goal, Pedro Gonçalves makes the run himself towards the right flank, cutting inside towards the byline, and then he finds Trincao near the penalty spot. From these two goals, I gathered that the left back's position is one key vulnerability for PSG because the role requires the player actually gets forward and contributes to attack, which may leave them vulnerable in defense. However, at the start of the season, Nuno Mendes has been injured for about 6 months, so I've had to use Lucas Hernandez in that position. But that wasn't the only game we played. We also played against FC Barcelona where we actually lost 3-1. And in this game, we see that dead balls and set pieces are like a potential weakness for PSG as well. You can also see this in the game against Arsenal, and even the one or few chances that Inter Milan had in the Champions League final, they did come from corners. Now, one goal did come from a penalty against Barcelona, while the other one came from a corner that was played to the far post. I also learned that without the right players in the system, it's near impossible to actually replicate this system with a different group of players. In this Barcelona game, we're without Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, and I already mentioned Nuno Mendes being out for 6 months, so that kind of put us at a disadvantage when we're coming up against Barcelona. But this further confirms how important PSG's signings were during the transfer window in January, as it kind of helped them push all the way to the UEFA Champions League final and eventually win the competition. So I have a tactic pack here from Delicious Story. If you don't know who Delicious Story is, he's one of the best tactic creators that I know for Football Manager. He's gone on to make very good tactics in the past, and he went on to create Luis Enrique's Football Manager 2024 tactic for PSG. And I kind of trust Delicious to actually make a good tactic. That's why I went on to go over and look at all the system. We have about 7 or 8 versions of the tactic. We're going to go through all of them and how it actually works in the game. And before we continue, I need to say something really important here. This tactic was created for PSG and it's not a meta tactic. I don't really expect it to work in the lower leagues as well. I don't expect it to work with Burton Albion or Blackburn Rovers or any team like that. So if that's what you're thinking, that's not what this tactic is. It is a tactic created for PSG. Now, PSG are one of the best teams in Football Manager. We all know that they're going to win most teams in the game. They're going to win their competition easily. They're going to do well in most competitions in the game as well. So that being said, the tactic works for PSG and doesn't work for any other team. It's not down to the tactic being bad. It's down to the tactic being suited for PSG and not for any other team. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and look at the very first version that Delicious went on to create. I will try to be slow in case you're trying to recreate the system, but I'll say this video is more of just unboxing the tactic together. So just stick around and then we see all the player roles and how they kind of work in the game and what we can actually go about doing. So looking at the FM24, the very first variant of the tactic, we can see here that Delicious goes on to create a 4-3-3 system, having a center forward as a complete forward on support duty. My guess is that this player could easily be a deep line forward, but the way the striker is set up in Luis Enrique's system, you could easily have a false 9 in there. Ousmane Dembele is usually the player in this role, and then you have Barcola playing on the left hand side and Desiree Doué playing on the right. But this is the game, some players are injured, that's by the way. The idea behind the complete forward on support is that this player is going to roam around a lot and drop deep into space. He's also been asked to shoot less often and also tackle harder, so he's almost like a playmaker role, but that's playing in number 10 in the attacking position, playing as a striker, more like a playmaker striker. So that's why he's gone here for the very first variant as a complete forward on support DT. We can see the back four, the central defenders have 2 ball playing defenders. In real life, that is ideally what PSG is going to use. The ball playing defenders tend to carry the ball from the goalkeeper. They tend to play out from the back. They're a possession based team. Now, the first issue I had with this first variant of the system is seeing the fullback playing on support DT. Now, this is normally going to be Nuno Mendes. So if I go ahead and switch this player Hernandez, you can see that Nuno Mendes is currently injured in the game, but that's irrelevant right now. He is going to take fewer risks, dribble less, shoot less often, stay wider and tackle harder. Now this is currently what the first variant says, but it's not the final variant of the tactic. We're going to go ahead and look at all of them. I feel, in my opinion, Nuno Mendes is a lot more attacking than the fullback on support DT suggests, so this essentially is not going to be the final role. That's why this was just the first taste variant of the tactic. Looking at the midfield, we have a playmaker in Vitinha playing as a deep line playmaker, but another issue with deep line playmaker is that this role is very stationary. If you look at the instruction, it says here hold this position. With the way PSG's midfield is in real life, they tend to rotate around a lot, so most of the players tend to just revolve around themselves. The midfielders tend to swap positions and then sometimes even drop deep as going into the right back position, getting the ball from there. So I sometimes think that this defensive midfielder role is more like a roaming playmaker or a regista, something like that, but we're going to look at all of that variants. Hakimi, of course, is playing as a wing back on attack DT in this particular variant, and of course you have the inside forward here. Tang Lee is normally going to be what's his name, Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. He's going to be on this other side. He's going to be the inside forward on attack. I completely agree with this role. Looking at the internal player instructions, he's going to shoot less often, roam from position, sit narrower, tackle harder, mark tighter, and of course mark specific position. So this is what the setup is, let's say for the version 1 of the tactic. If we look at the teams instructions, what generally they're playing with a positive mentality because PSG is a possession-based team, and what the positive mentality does is ask you to play in a patient manner, even though you're trying to score goals as often as you can. So that's completely fine. I do agree with that one. But if you look at the in possession instructions, shorter passing with a very high tempo. Now I don't know how high PSG's tempo is. Now, because they're PSG, they could succeed with this, to be honest. And for me, when I watch PSG play games, that they tend to play the game in a very slow tempo, to be honest. They never really rush things. I never see them playing on a high tempo. So extremely high tempo is a bit over the top for me from what I noticed. But like I said, this is the first variant. So if you look at the in transition phase, counter press counter, PSG tend to do that a lot. For counter, I don't know because they tend to always have the ball in the opposition's territory. So I don't know if they really have space to counter attack. But against teams like Inter Milan in the final, they did have some counter-attacking going on. So I'm going to just agree with that one as well. Taking short kicks, distributing it to the centre backs, yes. Donnarumma tends to do that a lot, so that's what's actually following the same principles here. When we look at the out of possession phase, they're playing with a high press, and what I agree with 100% is the much higher defensive line. They have probably the highest defensive line that I've seen in Europe in a very long time, and I don't know how to get away with it. Maybe because their pressing is more often, but I think in real life, PSG have a relentless type of pressing. Against Inter Milan in the final, in the Champions League final, they had to go over the top with their pressing because if you allow Inter Milan player from the back, they could go ahead and hurt you. So I may just disagree with this for now, but let's just look at the version 2 and see what's actually going on in there. We'll just go ahead in here and just go ahead and load another tactic. So we have here the version 2 of the Luis Enrique PSG tactic, and we go ahead and load that one in. And here we go. We can see Dembele is now playing as a false nine, right? So false nine with what other instruction, run from position so he can drop a lot deeper if possible. He moves in channel as well and then tackle harder. But this time Kvaratskhelia is playing as a wide player and a winger on attack DT, and in fact both wingers are actually as wingers on attack right now. But because they have the other foot, like Kvaratskhelia is right footed playing on the left hand side, he will still tend to cut inside. You can do that for the winger on attack, ask them to cut inside and run from position, still marking their positions and then marking that. Ideally, this is going to be the right back, right? Marking the right back of the opposition's team. So it tends to contribute defensively. And we can see here that for the defensive midfielder, we have a regista in there now instead of a deep line playmaker on support. Now, the regista is a bit more aggressive, so the pressing intensity here might be a lot higher. Okay, still more often trigger press, much higher defensive line and high press selected. Box-to-box midfielder and central midfielder on support duty playing in midfield. So you can see with this setup, there's a lot of rotation happening right now. I like this system more. So if you look at the fullbacks on this side, Hakimi takes on a complete wing back attacking role, and then Nunes goes for a fullback on attack. Still a bit more defensive having a fullback in there. Honestly, if I was want to create the system, I would have Nunes play as a complete wing back on attack. But I realized that he's a bit more defensive compared to Achraf Hakimi. He tends to drop back and go forward a lot. So I think I can understand having a fullback on attack in this role. He will be taking fewer risks, running wide with the ball, shooting less often, staying wider and tackling harder. The back four remains the same with the goalkeeper for this particular variant. Achraf Hakimi, on the other hand, he takes fewer risks, crosses the ball more often, cuts inside, so he tends to get into this middle of the pitch here. I saw that in the Champions League final when he got the goal, so complete wing back is the only player that could actually do that. Hakimi getting into the box and finishing off a chance. You only see that with the complete wing back, so I think that's really accurate for that role. For the team instructions in variant 2, it changes a lot because they're playing with an extremely high tempo still, but they have a much shorter passing range now, and which is slightly more like PSG, I guess. They're overlapping on the left hand side and underlapping on the right hand side, so this is bringing Hakimi into the box now, and this is also allowing the men to get forward. Their attacking width here is extremely wide, which I like because I noticed that in the final as well. I noticed that in the game against Arsenal. PSG tend to stretch the pitch a whole lot. They're also working the ball into the box. Looking at the in transition phase, they're playing similar to what they did in variant 1. So everything here stays the same. And I think for the out of possession, everything here stays the same as well. So what he tweaked is just the in possession instructions and of course some of the player roles to help them be a bit more expressive. So this is more of an attacking version of the first system that we saw. Let's go ahead and look at variant 3 and see what's in there. Variant 3 actually has two versions, one that has 60% possession and there's another one here. So let's just look at this first one. The only tweak with this system from variant 2 is that you have a Metala on attack DT, and the inverted wing back is what Nunes is actually playing right now. So that's a slight tweak to it. This must have been really challenging for Delicious to go through and build this system. In real life, managers don't just have one system with one role. Players tend to do very different things at different points, because I've seen Nunes also get into the half space and sometimes try to take shots. I've seen him score a goal as well. So the inverted wing back role is also a solid option in here. So we see Delicious Story actually try to recruit that in this system. It's a complete package, to be honest. This is a complete PSG setup. As a football manager, you need to have as many as 4-5 variants of your tactic and then try to switch them. You can have them in your head and try to make those tweaks in game. So variant 3, that's what we have. Much shorter passing, high tempo, very similar to variant 2. Let's look at variant 3 for 60% possession. Is it any different? It's the exact same tactic. Okay, exact same tactic, just say with a different name. That's what we have as variant 3, 60% possession. Let's go ahead and look at the SUS version of PSG's tactic. What this probably means is this is what you do when you're trying to kill the game off. So here we have a defensive mentality set for the system. The tempo is much lower and much shorter when they're wasting time whenever possible. They're also playing with counter press and counter, which is strange to be honest, but they have a mid block now. They're also taking short kicks and distributing to the center backs. But if you look at the out of possession, they're playing in the mid block and the stand defensive line. They're also getting stuck in and trapping the position outside. So this is how PSG tend to sit back. This is how they tend to protect the lead, which is quite good. They're slightly more often trigger press, but they're also trying to tackle the opposition a lot more, trying to get that ball back as soon as possible. In this role, Kvaratskhelia goes on an inside forward, so he's going to be helping the striker. He's no longer acting as a winger, to be honest. And you have Fabian Ruiz go from a Mezzala to play as a central midfielder on attack. And then this time you have a DLP on support, and of course Mezzala on support DT on the right hand side. So less movement except for the central midfielder on attack DT, who is going to get ahead and try to finish off chances. We see the complete forward come back in here instead of the false 9, which is quite good. So that's how you just try to kill the game off and defend better and try to hold on to the lead. There's one other system we can look here. This is VA. I suggest this is the very attacking variant of this tactic. If you go ahead and load that in, you have the very attacking system in here. DLP, very similar to the defensive system. The only change here is that the fullback is no longer an inverted wing back. He is now playing as very similar to the defensive system. It's just that this is all out. So everybody else stays the same except, oh, actually everybody is the same. All the player roles stay the same. But if you look at the in possession phase, there's a lot of instructions that come in here now. They're stretching the pitch a whole lot and exploiting the flanks a whole lot, hitting early crosses, running at the opposition defense, doing everything possible to get the goal. This is a bit over the top. You can kind of use this in the last 10 minutes they gave you. You know that you badly need a goal, you can go for this. But playing a whole season like this might be traumatic to some of your players, and it might be just too much for them to handle. In transition, it's pretty much the same. They're taking short kicks, distributing to the center backs. And of course, if we look at the out of possession phase, high press, much higher defensive line. Everything else here stays the same. They're only trapping outside. They're not getting stuck in anymore, and they're only just having the more often trigger press instead of much more often trigger press. I don't think any of their tactics have had the much more often trigger press selected. That might be too much in FM24. So we have one more system to look at now, which is the ultimate Luis Enrique version 4 tactic, which is what I would say you could use throughout the entire season. You can go ahead and load this in and see what we have. Now, this is what I would like to call the final variant of the tactic. We have a complete forward on support duty. Kvaratskhelia and Bakola playing as wingers on attack. Ideally, I would like Kvaratskhelia to be an inside forward, but that's what Delicious Story has gone for here. You have Nuno Mendes playing as an inverted wing back on support duty instead of a fullback on support. So in case you're trying to figure out which roles you would like to use, what role do you think Nuno Mendes could actually go ahead and use in this system? Should it be an inverted wing back? Should it be a fullback on attack duty? Personally, I'll go for a fullback on attack. I kind of like that one. But I think inverted wing back also works well. But I like the fullback because you can actually ask him to cut inside, just like you would for an inverted wing back. So complete wing back for Achraf Hakimi. Ball playing defenders stay the same. And here we see my favorite role, which is the roaming playmaker in the DM position. There's going to be a lot of movement here, so this is ideally what PSG is doing. So Fabian Ruiz gets into the half spaces, helps Kvaratskhelia on the wings, and you can see box-to-box midfielder for one Emery. Ideally, this is going to be João Neves. So João Neves is going to be here, Vitinha, João Neves, and Fabian. So these are the three players that are going to be rotating all around. This could be Desiree Doué. Do I have him in this team? Surely I have Desiree Doué. Oh, here he is. Desiree Doué is not seen as a wide player. As a wide right player, he's only seen as a left and an attacking midfielder, which is strange in Football Manager because Doué can play here very comfortably, right? So you can have Doué in here and then Ousmane Dembele playing as a striker. This is ideally the system. Look at their team instructions. If you look at their team instructions, we have positive mentality set, and then you have teams. Passing directness is very much short, and I think I like that one as well. but the tempo is extremely high, which is something I don't always agree, because I feel PSG is very passive when they're in possession of the ball. They don't like to rush things too much, but I can just leave it as it is. The width is very wide. They're also looking for the overlap on the left and underlap on the right hand side. You can see them walking the ball into the box and then also playing low crosses because their strikers are not that tall. If you have Gonzalo Ramos in the game, sorry, if you can just go ahead and check that. He is 6'1". So you can go ahead and switch that from a low cross to mixed crosses or floated crosses because he's kind of like a target forward for them, I'll be honest. And everybody else kind of just remains the same. So that's what Delicious Story has gone on to create. Remember to go ahead and check out his channel. He goes ahead to make amazing tactics, so go ahead and check him out. So if you want to play like PSG on Football Manager, this is a tactic pack that you will need. I'm going to put a link in the description so you can get it from Delicious Story's website. You can go ahead and download the tactic for yourself and see how it is, just like I did. And then you can try it out for any other team in case it goes out to work. But I will want to warn you, this is a tactic created for PSG, so I do not expect it to work for any other team. But in case you want to give it a try, you can go ahead and give it a try. And let me know if it works out for you the same way it worked out for PSG in real life and on Football Manager.